Good afternoon and welcome to the Caribbean Maritime University's Port Royal Lecture Series. Your moderator today is the president of the Caribbean Maritime University, Professor Andrew Spencer.
Let's try this again. Ladies and check 1, 2. Okay, and we're live and ready to go. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this third staging of the Port Royal Lecture Series. I wanted to give a big round of applause for this wonderful initiative, which started early in 2023. We saw the first staging looking at the blue economy. We had exciting presentations by Minister Edmund Bartlett, Minister Matthew Samuda, and 2 ambassadors, as well as the second staging where we looked at gender balance in logistics, and we had our own Dr. Yvette Johnson, we had Dr. Dela Bean from the UWI, but we also had the French Minister of the Seas who gave us a very exciting keynote. Now today, here we are at the third staging where we're about to get a keynote like no other. And if you believe that what I'm saying is true, I think in anticipation, as they say in church, you must praise in advance. I think in anticipation, you should applaud at the fact that we're going to be in for a treat today. I just want to start very quickly, though, with some background to why we're having this conversation. And in my few conversations with the Honorable Michael Lee Chin, he mentions to me that he can give us a course on turnaround. Yes? And he says he has a very recent example of what turnaround management looks like. And I know he'll tell you more about that, but he has come to the right place to talk about turnaround management because the CMU and those of us seated in here can attest to the fact that we too have lived through an exciting couple of years of turnaround management, right? All right. And so given my own background, ladies and gentlemen, as what some would call a strategist, with my laboratory being tourism in large part, I have had the task wherever I go of connecting the dots for people. And so I'm going to attempt to connect the dots for you as I bring our keynote speaker on. So when I was at tourism at the TPDCO as the CEO, my job was to connect a particular dot. Go back with me to years ago at the Bournemouth University in the UK, where I studied strategic management as a PhD and tourism. Many people didn't understand that tourism wasn't just fun and games, and it was my job to connect those dots for some people. And I want to pause at this moment to connect an important dot that we didn't connect at the beginning, and to welcome our very esteemed guests, as I see one coming up the aisle. It reminds me, and no, Professor Giles, please come all the way to the front, sir. I invite you to the front. And I'd like to take this opportunity, first of all, to welcome our keynote, the Honorable Michael Lee Chin, to welcome the President of the Northern Caribbean University, Dr. Lincoln Edwards, to welcome the President of the University of the Commonwealth Caribbean, Professor Colin Giles, all of my friends with whom I am privileged to serve with in other capacities. Welcome to our space, and welcome to all of our distinguished guests, all of the leadership team from the NCB Financial Group, as well as the leadership team from the CMU and from the JCF and others that I see around who are too erudite for me to remember all of you, but welcome nonetheless. And so one of the dots I had to connect at tourism was that it was not just fun and games, that tourism was serious business. If you don't believe it's serious business, simply look at its contribution to foreign exchange. And so when I entered the maritime space, I also had the task of connecting a particular set of dots. We had to start putting together the fact that maritime was not just about a maritime of frolic and enjoyment at sea, but that maritime was about a time to marry all the elements that others never thought could get married. And I know as you look at the topic today, many of you are probably here out of curiosity. What will the chairman have to say about logistics and engineering education in the financial sector? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to look too far, because when I find it very interesting that in every news item, anybody here watch TVJ News? CVM News, not to be particular to any brand. If you don't watch the news, do you read the print media? Every single time there is a conversation about trade surplus and trade deficit, the background and the backdrop is always a set of containers, some ships, and things to do with maritime shipping and logistics. And so the point, ladies and gentlemen, is that countries and economies do not have a chance of existing without our expertise, because we're fundamental to trade and we're fundamental to the existence of economies. And this means manufacturing. This means energy sector. This means tech. This means tourism. And of course, this means banking and finance. And so today we're here to smash a few myths. We're here to smash and destroy the kind of insularity that exists in people's minds about how programs and educational programs are supposed to work. So I have told students in the past that your tourism degree is as much a degree in service delivery management. And we tell our students here at the Caribbean Maritime University that your degree in customs, immigration, freight forwarding is as much a degree in operations management as it is a degree in management studies. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I have this exciting opportunity to tell you a few things, but I'm going to let the chairman tell you more first. And then I'm going to share with you a little bit more about the ingenuity of the players here at the CMU, the logisticians who we have in the Faculty of Shipping and Logistics, and the engineers who are the solution-oriented individuals. Mr. Leachin tells me that what he wants to transform his business, because he's an engineer and he understands the mind of an engineer, are the most brilliant engineers we have to offer. We took 10 of those with some of the highest GPAs to his office some time ago. And during that time, I don't know if I'm being premature in saying it, but they were hired on spot. Their onboarding has not taken place yet, but their exams also just concluded. So you'll understand the power of time. But ladies and gentlemen, I would love to invite at this time a gentleman who you have come to hear speak. You didn't come here to hear me speak, so let me hurry and get out of the way. And just say, as founder and chairman of Portland Holdings, Michael Leachin is widely regarded as a visionary entrepreneur whose philosophy of doing well by doing good has resulted in extraordinary business success and inspiring philanthropic initiatives. Mr. Leachin is the chairman of NCB Financial Group, and since the purchase of NCB in 2002, Mr. Leachin is committed to NCB, the People's Bank. And if you're paying attention to the media, you will see that resonate, the People's Bank. He is committed to ensuring that the NCB is one of the best banks globally, excelling in the areas of efficiency, governance, and world-class customer service and care, while nurturing at the bank an owner's mindset among employees and striving for the highest standards. Mr. Leachin has a bachelor's degree in civil engineering from McMaster University in Canada. He has been awarded honorary doctorate degrees from esteemed universities and serves on various boards globally, including the board of the National Commercial Bank and Guardian Holdings Limited. Mr. Leachin has been recognized with numerous prestigious awards, including the Order of Jamaica in 2008 for his exceptional business and philanthropic contributions, and recognized as a member of the Order of Ontario in 2017. He has also been appointed to significant roles, such as Chancellor of Wilfrid Laurier University in Canada and Chair of Jamaica's Economic Growth Council. He is guided by the philosophy, as we mentioned before, of doing well by doing good, and remains committed to building a better Jamaica. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for a better Jamaica. A round of applause for Mr. Michael Leachin.
Thank you, Prof. Can you hear me at the back? So, can you hear me at the back? Yes? So early in my career, I thought to myself, what does fulfillment mean to me as an individual? Because I want to get it right early. And once I get it right early, lock it in, I'm going to live it. So I thought, nobody is an island unto him or herself. All of us in this room are standing on the shoulders of our forebears, those around us, generations ago, etc. All of us. So a lot of our success has nothing to do with us, by the way. So once you realize that, it humbles you. Because I didn't choose my mother. I was fortunate to have been born to this lady who had high standards, high values, and she led by example. I didn't choose her. I was blessed. I didn't choose the era in which I was born. Had I been born 250 years ago, I couldn't even get an education. So I was blessed to have been born in this era. And thirdly, I didn't choose my country. I was born in a country that made me a confident human being. Someone who feels that because of my upbringing, because I wasn't exposed to too much damaging, confidence-damaging experiences. I grew up in Port Antonio. It was pure. I didn't choose my country. I was blessed to have been born in this one. So I don't forget these things. So my being here is a function of mother, era, country, all of which I had nothing to do with. So once you realize that, it grounds you. It grounds you. You don't feel full of yourself. Because had anyone been missing, I'd be a different person. And I didn't choose them. Okay, so having said that, so what does fulfillment, I had to define early what fulfillment means to me. And I wanted to codify it so that I'd never forget it. And everything I do, every organization I'm a part of, that becomes the purpose of the organization. And I codified it in terms of the following. Prosperitas cum caritate. Prosperity with care. Prosperitas cum caritate. In other words, doing well by doing good. Bring people along with you. This lady, this Indian lady, her name is Indra Nui. She emigrated from India, went to America, and she eventually became the CEO of Pepsi Cola. Now this Indian lady become the CEO of Pepsi Cola. She must be good. So she was being interviewed in India, and they said, how did you do it? She said, ever since I was a girl, number one, I did three things. Number one, I was always curious. Why are some days cloudy? Other days rainy? Other days foggy? Why? And that curiosity has never left me. So I'm a curious person. So it's a matter of I have continuous education. Secondly, whatever I do it with my head, my heart, and my hands. I think about it. I emote it. It becomes a purpose, a passion, my heart, and I actually do. Head, heart, hands. And thirdly, whatever I do, I work to uplift others. So, three things Indra Nui said. Number one, always be a continuous student. Number two, when you do whatever you do it with your head, you think about it, you do it with your passion, heart, and you actually do. And thirdly, whatever you do, you uplift others. Okay, background. So that's all background, context. So I wanted to have fulfillment. Now, one of the first lessons I learned in life is frameworks are important. And I learned, this became crystal clear when my role model in business, Warren Buffett, was asked, how come you're so successful? He said, to be successful over the long run doesn't require stratospheric IQ. Woo! Thank God for that. Unusual business insight or any particular inside information. We don't need any of that. What's needed is a sound intellectual framework for making decisions, and secondly, the ability to keep your emotions from corroding your framework. I said, wow, is that simple? Yes, but it's simple, not easy. Because it's not easy to govern your life by frameworks over the long run. Not easy. It's simple to say it, not easy to do. Right? So it's simple and it's not easy to control your emotions over the long run. Not easy. And the only way to be able to control your emotions, period, is if you have a value system that really would be equivalent to your principles. A value system that is absolute, not relative. Absolute. It's like a religion. And you'll do nothing else. These are my values. And irrespective, this is my framework. Okay? So that's what I learned from Mr. Buffett. So now, executing on that, the first thing I concluded was, first framework we're going to talk about. If you want to be successful at anything in life, there's a 3-step formula. You want to be the most successful student, athlete, professor, doctor, this formula always works. Number one, identify a role model. Who in the world has done this endeavor that I'm pursuing to the best in the world? Identify a role model and make sure your standards are 9.58. Everybody knows what 9.58 is in this room? Make sure your standards are 9.58, not 40 seconds over the 100 meters. So you identify the best. Identify a role model. Number two, kneel figuratively at the role model's feet and say, role model, how did you do this? In other words, get the recipe to its most detailed minutia. Role model, get the recipe. And thirdly, don't change the recipe. Execute it faithfully. And if you did that, there's no different outcome that you will have. The role model recipe, do the same. So Warren Buffett is my role model, and I say so unabashedly. Now, Albert Einstein once said, when he was asked, he once said, the eighth wonder of the world is compounding. The eighth wonder of the world is compounding. So if we don't think compounding, we're going to miss the boat. So what does that mean? I'll go straight with you. Y equals X. What does that line graph look like? Anybody? Right? It's linear, right? Y equals X to the nth power. What does that line graph look like? Okay? Y equals minus X to the nth power. Okay? That's what it looks like. So let's label these axes. Success, failure, and time. Okay, so what this is saying is, and by the way, which of these two line graphs, y equals x, this one, or this one, y equals x to the nth power, which of these two line graphs better represent people's expectations? Which? Y equals x, right? The straight line, expectations. So what does this mean? So if we talk about success, let's talk about some of the component parts of success, like effort, right? So you put out effort. What it means, you put out effort over time. You go along this time abscissa, x-axis. In order to go up, you put out effort. You get to this point over this amount of time. You'd expect that amount of success, right? Because we think expectations is linear. So, and you put out more effort over more time, right? You're going up this curve, you get to this point. Over this point in time, you'd expect that much more amount of success. But, ladies and gentlemen, tell me, what in life is linear? What in life is linear? Nothing, except for a spreadsheet, right? In fact, most things in life are better defined by y equals x to the nth power, which is this. In other words, you put out effort, you go along this abscissa, you get to this point here in time, you expect this amount of success, right? But this is all you get down here, this little deggy piece. So what do most people say? So what's the difference between what you expect and what you actually have gotten? Disappointment. Isn't that so? So you say, okay, my mom said I should persevere. So you keep going, you put out more effort, you get to this point, right? You expect that amount of success, but this is all you get. So what does that tell you? What's that? The difference between that and this called more disappointment. So now, what do most people do? They say, this doesn't work. And they give up. And once you give up, let me go and try something else. You try something else, guess what you do? You're actually going back to zero. Right? But there is a point here, the inflection point, whereby between 0 and this point, you put out an inordinate amount of effort to get a disproportionately low amount of success or return. And that's the reason why most people give up between 0 and that inflection point. Post that inflection point, start going up the gradient of the curve. Right? So once you go on the other side, you put out a little bit of effort, and you get a disproportionately large amount of return. Isn't that how life is? So the question is, what do we need to be able to persevere through the things, the effort that is put out, and the disproportionately low amount of return we get as we go along to get to this point whereby afterwards it's heavenly, it's nirvana? What do we need to be able to persevere? Okay, that's the question. Conversely, y equals minus x to the nth power. You can behave badly, meaning you're going along this curve now, minus x. So you get to this point, right? And this is the result, the failure result you get, but it really hasn't shown up yet. So what do most people do? They keep behaving badly, because somehow behaving badly sometimes feels good. A lot of times, right? So it's easy to behave badly versus the opposite. So they keep going, get to this point, still, no failure shows up. But there's another inflection point here, whereby once you cross that inflection point and you behave badly just one more time, and you go to jail. You don't see it every day? So therefore, the question is, what do we need to be able to persevere through the inflection point and get to the other side, which is where success is? The first thing we need to do is to be driven, lead our life based on having a purpose. But when you have a purpose, that is what will fuel you, fuel your confidence. When times are awful, it will still fuel because you do nothing else. Because that's your purpose. It's your value system, right? Secondly, what do you need? Once you have a purpose, you have to get into rhino mode. So what's rhino mode? Well, what are the three most heavily characteristics of a rhinoceros? Number one, thick-skinned. Number two, head down. And number three, keep moving forward. Thick-skinned, head down, keep moving forward, irrespective of what hits you. Okay? So, you want to get through to the other side, you have to get into rhino mode. And number three, you have to persevere. But it comes down to having a purpose and governing your life based on being purpose-driven. Okay, let's talk about engineering now, which is why you came here. So the question we all have to ask ourselves is, do you have a toolkit that every morning you wake up and you have assets in your toolkit that you know exactly what those assets are? Do you have one? And every morning you have to perform ablution on those assets. Anybody can point to their toolkit? What's in your toolkit that you wake up every morning, shower off, towel dry, put some perfume on, and get ready for life? And by the time evening time comes around, the eyes are bleary, they get frumpled up, and they need to rest. Next morning again, you have to perform ablution again. Okay? So what's in your toolkit, guys? What's in your toolkit? Number one, I can speak for myself. As an engineer, the big takeaway from me, the residual value of engineering for me is I'm a problem solver. Any problem you give me, I'm going to solve it. Because that's the attitude. And by the time evening time comes, you get tired, right? Number two, the second asset in my toolkit is, as the professor said, I connect dots. I connect dots. And I don't just look at easy dots like 2 follows 1 or C follows B. I try to connect disparate dots. Like a lesson I may have learned at Excelsior in 6B in 1967, 68, and connect it to human resource today. How about that? So we always have to be thinking, connecting dots and disparate dots. But to connect disparate dots, one has to think. And most people don't think. So you consciously have to make sure that every day you say, I connect dots. Thirdly, the third asset in my toolkit is that what, Maureen? My God. Number one, anybody can tell me? A fresh pair of eyes and ears. A fresh pair of eyes and ears. In other words, guys, let me ask you a question. When you came here this afternoon, how many red cars did you see? How many? Any? Most people can't even remember. When you leave and go back home, you think you're going to count red cars? You think? So therefore, whatever we're conscious of, that's what we see. Right? So just remember that red car exercise. So to traverse a route every day, you want to see something different every day. And to do that, you have to have a fresh pair of eyes and ears. And by the way, there are two types of listeners. Number one, people who listen to rebut. And number two, people who listen to understand. Who am I? Who are you? And it's easy to listen to rebut, especially the more successful you become, the more professional, or the higher your education, right? It's easy to listen to rebut. So number one, first pair of eyes and ears, right? What type of listener are you? And number three, fourth asset in my toolkit is I align with people. Okay? So now, going back to engineering, problem solving. Let's talk about problem solving, because that is, as I said, the huge residual benefit I have gotten that is still with me as an engineer. And every day, you face umpteen problems. So if you don't have a methodology to solve problems, right, then they just wear you down. So what is the engineering methodology for solving problems? Number one, as an engineer, we're trained to observe. Right? There's an issue, you observe. Number two, from your observations, you create a hypothesis from your observations. I create a hypothesis. So whatever the problem, observe. Create a hypothesis. Number three, stress test the hypothesis. Attack it from many different angles. If it holds true, you codify it. Right? And lastly, you hardwire it so it becomes who you are. So that's the engineering process. So whatever problem there is, that's the process I go through. That's the process engineers go through. And one of the reasons why I started off with this is because this here really should define, this portion of the presentation should be taught to every single student. Because this really defines what they need to do to become successful, whether it's become the best student or the best engineer or the best doctor. Okay, so that's the scientific process. So let me give you an idea when we now want to do the engineering process. Let me give you an idea as to how that has played out in the real world, that engineering mindset. My first job in Canada, I couldn't get a job as an engineer. So I had three non-engineering job offers. The first was to become a soap salesman. The second was to become a long-haul truck driver. And the third was to become a securities advisor, selling securities. I opted for the third one. As a young immigrant in Canada, aged 26, I didn't know anyone with money. But to sell securities, you need people with money. I had to cold call, knock on unfriendly doors. I had to do that. And when a family was so gracious to say, I'll see you. I listened to you. I thought, oh my gosh, I felt such a debt of gratitude that someone would really want to listen to me. But I said to myself, how do I repay this person for just being gracious? And I thought, Mike, what's the highest value add you can give to this family here tonight when you go and see them? And the answer was, make them wealthy. That's the highest value add I could have given. So now, this was 1977. So I'm now thinking, oh my gosh, if that is the highest value add I can give to the family, is there a formula that if you practice consistently, the only outcome is wealth? Because there's such a formula, I want to know what that formula is. So guess what I did? I applied the engineering mindset to it. So guys, is there a formula that if you practice consistently, the only outcome is wealth? This is today. Is there? Yes or no? What is the formula? Yes? Tell me the formula then. So, you Google it, nothing comes up. Today. But I figured it out back by 1980. And what I wanted to do, through observation, remember the first step is what? I observe. Through observations, I said, if I can tie together, connect dots of all the wealthy people in the world and the things they did to become wealthy, that's the formula. So I observed. I studied wealthy people, people who created it, not married into it, or stole it, or inherited it. I observed. And I created a hypothesis. And the hypothesis was the following. Everybody who created wealth did 5 things. Number 1, they own a few, not too many, high-quality businesses. Everybody. Number 2, they make sure they really understand them. Number 3, they make sure they're in strong long-term growth industries. Number 4, they make sure they use other people's money prudently. And lastly, their attitude towards how long should I hold this business or these businesses is I'll hold them for as long as I continue to understand them, as long as they remain high quality, and as long as the industry within which they're domiciled remains in a strong long-term growth mode. That's the hypothesis I created from the observations, looking at every wealthy person, not every, but wealthy people throughout the world. Okay? So, engineering process, observe, create a hypothesis, stress test it. I would go around and just talk about this and say, tell me what's the flaw in my logic? Then thirdly, no flaw, I codified it. And then I wired it, so it becomes who I am. Okay? And I thought to myself, now that I've found the formula, that is my purpose. I'm going to go around the world, and that is what I'm going to be promoting and executing on, which is what I did. Okay? So you can see the engineering process in place. Now today, I'd like to give you a couple more observations. Engineer again. Observe. Create a hypothesis. I would suggest to you that 99.9% of the problems that you face as a professional, as a business person, can be attributed to what is called the principal agent problem. 99.9% of problems that we face can be attributed to the principal agent problem. What's that? A principal is an owner, right? Someone who owns. Agent is someone who the owner employs. And the difference between how the owner does things and the staff of the owner does things, that is the problem. The principal agent problem. It's a thing. You can Google it, okay? And we all should Google it. Because, 99.9% of the problems that you will face can be attributed to the principal agent problem. So, therefore, the solution is to make, and by the way, I'm a principal, but I'm also an agent in certain cases. So we flip back between principal and agent in different aspects of our lives. At home, we're all principles. You own our home, right? Or you may own a task. Or you may own an asset. You may own a task. Or you may own a liability, debt. So what are the qualities of a true principal, a true owner? Number one, a true owner takes responsibility for the asset, liability, or the task. And by the way, all of this is derived from that engineering process, right? A true owner takes responsibility for the assets, liability, or the task at hand. A true owner has accountability. And lastly, a true owner either suffers consequences when things don't go right, or they realize victory when things go right. Okay? But suffer consequences. And that's a big difference. The last one between principal and agent. Let me give you an example. At home, you own your home. You're the principal. So you say to the kids, look, when you leave the house, you turn the stove off. And you keep preaching that every day. One day at work, you get a call, the house burned down. What the hell happened? My kids left the stove on. So my kids were acting like agents. So when I went home, I said, so where are we going to sleep tonight? They said, I don't know, Dad. You take care of it. Who suffers the consequence? Not them, me. Me never burned the house down. So now, we therefore have to make our children better owners. That's the solution, right? So the solution to this major problem in the world is the principal-agent problem, is to make our agents better owners. So I leave my house now. I'm an owner. I walk outside. I see a piece of trash on the ground. What do I do? That's if it's my lawn. But how about outside of my lawn? What do I do? You walk by it. Don't you? Don't we all? We all walk by it. You get to work. You cross this threshold of work. You're an agent, typically. Because if at home, if you see a piece of dirt on the floor, you'd bend down, kneel down, and scrub it until it's clean. At work, you don't do the same thing. But you're an agent. So you went from being a principal at home, as you traverse to work, you flip into an agent. But can you imagine, or it doesn't matter, you're a principal at home, you go to church, same thing. You go to the gym, same thing, right? So the key is we should all aspire to be better owners in every area of our life. And that's where we'll get optimality. Okay? So, principal-agent problem, and lastly, standards. Standards. The definition of an engineer is a civil engineer, is someone who can build a bridge for $1 when it takes the average person $100 to build the bridge. Right? An engineer if it's a civil engineer can build a bridge for $1 when the average person will take $100. Everybody can build a bridge. But who does it most efficiently? So, ladies and gentlemen, be good. I'll end off by the following. And it's just, again, being observant. When I came back on July the 17th to be more hands-on with NCB, and when you're in it, hands-on, it's a different matter than when you're just non-executive director. Okay? Big difference. You're not in it. So I thought, because I know my antennae are up and I'm looking at everything and swatting every fly. One observation I made, one thought I had was, one moment, Amazon, they distribute 300 million parcels all over the world every day on time. You can track it. And my bank, NCB, we have 300 ABMs, and we keep getting complaints. Something wrong. Something wrong. And by the way, I'm being hard on ourselves. It's everybody. It's the 800 ABMs, not just 300, okay? I'm just being gracious to everybody else. Okay? So I thought something is wrong. And guess what I observed? Amazon can distribute 1 million parcels every day because they're a logistics company. And they see themselves as a logistics company. So they hire logistics engineers. Right? And it's all about optimality and optimizing workflow, right? Time and management studies. Am I right? To optimize. They're looking at building that bridge for $1 by hiring people who optimize, people who are trained to observe, create a hypothesis, stress test, codify, and hardwire. So Amazon, they know who they are. They are a logistics company. So I thought, but one moment, every bank is should be a logistics business because we have repetitive processes. But how many logistics engineers do we really hire? How many? Oh my gosh, how could I have missed that one? Right in front of me. Eh? How many logistics? We should be a workflow process engineering company, institution. That's what financial institutions should be. But how many financial institutions think like that? Not very many. We didn't, but that was then. Today is different. Our eyes are a little less bleary. So, ladies and gentlemen, engineering, the engineer's mindset is a way of thinking. It distills everything. It's governed by frameworks. It's governed by frameworks. And having frameworks is what will give you the ability to make consistent decisions and minimize failure. When you govern yourself by your values / frameworks / principles, it is what will, the engineering mindsets governed by frameworks is what will allow you to be able to control your emotions. So on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you very much for being here and best to you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will agree with me that the dots have been connected, right? Another round of applause for that. I am now, however, going to invite the chairman. We're going to have a conversation, and we're going to invite you to engage as well. And at this time, Mr. Leachin, you come. No, right here. On that side. All right, so ladies and gentlemen, we heard a number of things today. And every time I hear the chairman speak, I get excited about not only logistics and engineering, but about life. Yes? And as he spoke, I thought about that connection between, he pointed to engineering at first, so I'm going to end at engineering. Let me start at logistics. Right, Chairman? So you mentioned logistics. And I wanted to just say a little bit about how our people have been conceptualizing it. We saw this as an opportunity to coin the phrase, from warehouses to Wall Street. From warehouses to Wall Street. And our people have done some case studies on this. We've looked at how our logistics degrees fit into your space. You mentioned one of them, you talked about internal processes, operational efficiency. There's inventory management, which is a key part of what you do. You have your third-party vendors. And it's about the movement, as you rightly said, routine activities. But just a little bit from you, though, in terms of your business and the risk management component of what you do. How does a logistics trained individual help you to minimize some of the risks you face?
Well, again, a logistics trained individual is really the honing of the engineering problem-solving mindset. And risk management, when people think of risk, especially in banking, you think about underwriting risk. Banking, right? Loan losses. When people think of risk in terms of an insurance company, you think of underwriting risk. But the question is there, is lack of profits a risk? Pardon me?
Absolutely.
Is lack of profits a risk?
Massive one.
Is not attending to attentively to your customers a risk? Is the not managing your publicity and your reputation a risk? Is not dealing with the press properly a risk? Is not having national aspirations a risk? So the risk management isn't just underwriting, focus on underwriting or in loan losses or for an insurance company, the risk of death. Risk management is all-encompassing. And again, that engineering problem-solving mindset is actually well honed, because it allows you to think very broadly, right? And once you think very broadly, you can you can zoom out and observe, but you can also go right into the electrons, right? So you can go from a zoomed out position to the hands-on position at the electron level.
Yep.
So that is what engineering did for the engineers. That's their training, or training.
So, ladies and gentlemen, it took me many years to complete a doctoral degree and then many publications to be given the rank of professor. But I think we can go right ahead and say Professor Michael Leachin right now, right? Yeah. I think we've been schooled today. Just the last point on logistics from me is that a lot of our logistics programs are big on data analysis and integration. We're big on how the data informs the refinement of processes and ensuring that those things which are supposed to be routine, as you said, slavishly sticking within the framework, is one of those kinds of qualities that we input in our students. When they leave us, we get rave results and reviews about them. But as we continue to infuse them in banking, what's the role of data in your own process?
Firstly, data is important, but invariably, you don't get relevant data. Invariably. Invariably, the data that you get starting with the board is garbage. Invariably. And I'll explain the logic to you. Let's say an organization has 5 layers. Layer number 1, as a business unit head. That business unit head wants to look good to his or her boss, right? So that business unit head is going to take the data and polish the data. Isn't that human nature? They're not just going to say, hey, you can see my warts. So the data, the polished data now goes up to the next level. What do you think the next level is going to do? The business unit head, what do you think that person is going to do? Polish it again. The 3rd level, 4th level, by the time it gets up to the board, what do you think you have? A perfect mirror. It's perfectly polished. So as I said, most data that would flow up because of what I just said is not very usable. So the question is, how can you get data that is trustworthy? That's the question.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we have to solve for at NCB. Making sure the data we get is trustworthy. And the only way to get the trustworthy data is to make sure you have a connection with the people who are actually doing the work, not necessarily with the tiers. Actually go into the belly of the beast and managed by walking around, and some other things that we're doing at NCB.
Yes, and Chairman, just to say, it will make many people uncomfortable when the head of the vessel is talking to people very deep in the belly, because that reveals and unveils truth.
Yes.
And that truth ultimately helps you to transform a space. Speaking of transformation...
Excuse me, in terms of data also, it is easy to sit in head office and figure out a strategy. That's what most people do, right? That's what strategists do. They sit in head office and figure out a strategy. But really, can you really figure out the best strategies to go talk to the customer? They'll tell you what to do.
Every time. And you know what's beautiful about these principles is that they are applicable across all of our spaces. We find that is absolutely true about our end users as well. We get pure, unadulterated truth from them, and that becomes valuable data. So speaking about strategy, I'm going to ask the team to project something here. We're going to talk about this just a little bit. To project on the screen for me a model. So our people at the CMU are brilliant. Everything that we need, everything that you need is right here at the Caribbean Maritime University, and we're very keen on sharing a little bit of that with you. So our team has put together a framework, Mr. Leachin, all right? And this particular framework, they've termed it N-gistics, which is somehow a combination of logistics and engineering. But they came up with an idea, and this idea, whether it gets legs or not, will be dependent on a number of things. But here's the idea they've come up with. They've said, okay, so at the heart of that, they've put NCB, and let's say NCB here represents a financial institution or a bank. All right, so what is the role of the banking system in this tokenized ecosystem that our people have come up with? So the first thing is that the banks will be responsible for issuing these tokens. Imagine a world where this happens, right? Issuing the tokens to the general public, and these tokens are like how people would get their phone cards and get other things that would enable them to transact business. Of course, the heart of that, Dr. Johnson, is that there must be a user-friendly app. And so the user-friendly app, also able to be developed by the CMU, is going to be accessible to all individuals and very, very easy for them to manipulate, all right? Imagine a world also where another layer of it involves a national courier service that service is purchased using the same tokenized app environment. And when that happens, you are able to move your goods around the country as you ought in a very simple fashion. Not just goods, but services, the plumber, the electrician, whatever you need, coming from the source of tokens issued by the bank. Let's say the bank issues these tokens, and the bank comes up with a tiered system, which says we give limits based on the customer and their ability to do some things. Now, why are we saying that this ecosystem makes any sense at all? Walk with me. Benefits to the bank. So, of course, the bank is responsible for issuing the tokens. It allows individuals, of course, to be able to transact business without walking around with large amounts of cash. It removes some of the fear that some people have now transacting businesses at ABMs, which are being so hard hit. It takes us to a place now where people are able to transact business without a credit or a debit card or even a bank account to begin with. But here's the clincher, and here's how the bank wins. In order to redeem these tokens, you must be able to go to a financial institution where you can convert this into cash as needed. Again, preempting the need for you to have an account in that space. Why have the team come up with this? Because we realize that there's a national problem, Mr. Leachin. And you are also a nationalist and a man who recognizes that there are national problems that you must solve as the private sector. This was a combination of our engineering dean and others looking at a potential system. Now, this will require some things, robust IT systems and the like, which can also be designed by our VP of Digital Transformation and others who are here. But I'm making the point that within the Caribbean Maritime University, with its 300 plus team members, 3,000 students, and how many people do you have in the NCB Financial Group, sir?
5,000.
5,000. Put that all together, we're talking about over 8,000 minds, brilliance, where real data can come, where real creativity can come from the minds of all of these individuals. So you are visionary in the fact that you reached out to us to say, look, I'm looking for logisticians, I'm looking for engineers. I am now at a point where I'd just like for you to share with us in a final sentence before I invite the audience to ask you a few questions. What was it that lit the spark in your mind? Because you've been doing banking for a while. You bought NCV in 2002. What was it in 2023 that made you say, why don't I have more logisticians? Why don't I have more engineers?
So there is a big difference between being an observer and being on the playing field. Big difference between being, I'm the non-executive chairman of NCB, meaning I'm not management, I'm the non-executive. So the directors are given information by management. Now, when you cross the threshold from being a non-executive into an executive, it's a totally different mindset, because you don't have the issues that you're dealing with. You don't have to deal with people. You have to deal with their egos. You have to deal with their standards. You have to deal with many issues coming at you. So your antennae are up. And that's when you become, when your antennae are up and you have your toolkit, right? Because you have to do the job. Your antennae are up and you have your toolkit. Your toolkit will include fresh pair of eyes and ears, right? And especially, guys, the first day on the job, you're kind of disoriented. So you do have a fresh pair of eyes and ears because everything is new to you. And because you have a fresh pair of eyes and ears, you observe more because you're in unfamiliar territory, right? Secondly, you have a problem-solving mindset because you have to now solve problems on the fly. Thirdly, we have to connect dots. And fourthly, you have to align with people. So just being a board member, there is that, as I said, it's more, you're more of an observer versus being in the playing field. When you're on the playing field, it's a different day. And at the same time, when you are in an environment that is unfamiliar, two emotions are triggered immediately. Number one, fear, right? And number two, excitement. And when you have fear and excitement in you at the same time, you cannot be complacent. Conversely, if you're doing the same job over and over, you don't have any fear, you don't have any excitement, then you're apt to be complacent. So what it means is, we should always put ourselves in a position whereby there's fear and excitement. And that's not intuitive, that's not normal. Nobody wants to do that. But to maintain being top of your game, you have to put yourself in that position whereby you're fearful, fear of failure, but you're also excited. You fear what is around the corner, but you're also excited about what's around the corner.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've heard it. And now we want to hear from you. And I'm hoping that my very engaging audience, you don't get the chairman here that often. And so we're excited to have him here. There are some roving microphones with ladies Bobik and Jody Ann. You can just indicate by a raise of your hand if you have a question for Mr. Michael Lee Chin. Do we have one? There's Jody Ann to the right, and there's Bobik to my left. We do have some finance people in the house. I know I'm going to get some questions. I see my VP of Finance here, and I see others who I'm sure will have a question or two about what Mr. Lee Chin has presented today. So we're opening the floor. Any takers? I see VP Chin is ready. Yes. Mr. Chin, go right ahead. Microphone coming.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for a compelling
He's
presentation.
not as
Michael,
strong voiced as I am, so if we could.
yes.
The
So
micro-
thank you for your presentation. It was quite compelling. My question is, CMU is involved in a large part with the movement of goods and services on the line. As President would, and many others would note, 90% of this island's goods and services have to come in by the sea. But having come in by the sea, they then come into the inland network or roads. And I think all of us have been trapped for long periods in roads, which subtract from our productivity. So I'm wondering, in the role of logistics and engineering and the convergence in the finance sector, do you think that there is a role for us to play collaboratively to solve that issue on the inland network? Because solving that issue, as you've pointed out, doing good, helps everybody do well, because we would have increased the throughput in the society. What are your thoughts on a collaboration to tackle that particular problem that we face every day? Sometimes, it takes us 2 or 3 hours to move from one point in Jamaica to the next. In that 2 or 3 hours, we could have been in Miami, completed meetings, and already be back.
Ladies and gentlemen, in true university fashion, the preamble is longer than the question. Well, that's fine. I know.
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, how can we together tackle some of the logistics challenges of moving from one place to the next in Jamaica, which takes us too long, sometimes longer than it would take to get to Miami?
Well, you mean how can the university and a financial institution collaborate to become a lot more efficient?
Yes.
Well, you need, in between, you need entrepreneurs who see an opportunity to create wealth. That's it. So that's it. You need that also. The institutions, we're just a finance. We finance, right? You provide the brain power. We also need the doers. The doers who are the entrepreneurs to really see a problem and have the resources and the mindset to really solve that problem and create wealth. So I don't know if I can give you a less generic answer. It may not be as what you want to hear, but that's the first thing that comes.
But Chairman, you know what I'd want you to share with us? You shared something with me which has stayed with me. The difference between an investor and a businessman. I think that clear nuance, it needs to be shared with this audience.
So, the difference between an investor and a business person. Every business person is really a capital allocator. You have capital allocator, and being a capital allocator, you wear 2 hats. Number 1 hat, I'm an investor, right? And number 2 hat, I'm a business person. I have to run a business, right? And I have to make a profit from running the business. And then when I make the profit, I turn around and have to make great investments with the profit. So as a capital allocator, in fact, Warren Buffett once summarized it in the following way. I'm a better businessman because I'm an investor. And I am a better investor because I'm a businessman. So as a business person, most business people only see themselves as an operator. But you have to be good at investing also, because you get profits. If you don't allocate those profits in a prudent way, as investors should, then you will not be optimizing the full and getting the benefit of compounding.
Yeah. And I'm of the view, as we close that point, ladies and gentlemen, that good capital allocators will be keen on investing in tertiary education spaces, especially those that are of a particular quality, right? Prof. Giles and Prof. Edwards, that where there's greater investment in the higher education landscape for more high quality research to take place, so that the solutions that Mr. Chin asked about may be more quickly realized, I think we will see the kind of growth in our country and in our region that we all so dearly long for. I know there's one, had another point?
Yeah.
All right, go right ahead, and then I'll take one more question from Mr. Markley.
So, as Prof was talking, I thought to myself, what's the ideal graduate? What's the profile of the ideal graduate? Well, that graduate should be someone who has the characteristics of being a great owner. Right? So what are the characteristics of a great owner? Number one, that person should be smart and creative. Smart and creative. Number two, that person should be high energy. High energy. Passionate.
Yes.
Number three, that person should be hands-on. Number four, that person should be hardworking. Number five, that person, that graduate, that quintessential graduate from CMU should have a high expectation of self.
Yes.
And lastly, that graduate should have a high expectation of the organization in the case of CMU, in this case, CMU. And I'm representing CMU, and there are certain standards that I have to abide by, live up to. So smart and creative, energetic, passionate, hands-on, hardworking, high expectation of self, and high expectation of organization. So if we, as an institution, can make sure that in our curricula, we capture those qualities and train our students to embody those qualities, that's the highest value we could be giving to our country in its national development.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chairman. And so we'll take one final question from Mr. Markley, soon to be doctor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Professor.
Right.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. Leachin. Thank you very much for your presentation. I appreciate the effort that you placed in it. My question is twofold. It's regarding the framework system that you spoke of earlier. It really struck a note with me. And the framework was regarding...
Which framework system?
The framework that you had mentioned earlier regarding decision making.
Yes.
And so you had alluded to the different points where you observe and then you create your hypothesis.
The process.
Right, the process. And you've applied that to your business. Do you have any frameworks for personal development, such as countering maybe a lack of willpower or, the perseverance aspect? Do you have a framework? I find that, especially young men, we don't have that kind of guidance. And so to hear you speak like this, I think if we could, attack that point, would be very grateful. Thank you.
So, thank you very much. Excellent question. The framework that comes to mind is identify a role model. Who can you relate to? Right? Someone who you'd like to emulate. Right? So, if you're a musician, what type of music? Who is the best in the world? Right? If you are a student, who is the best in the world? Get the recipe and do the same. And just when you hit some odd notes, odd life notes, you ask yourself the question, what would my role model do? And that should be your guide.
Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Well, I think, ladies and gentlemen, we've had quite a feast today. We've heard a lot. I think at this point, unless there's another question and I don't see another, okay. ACP Thompson is going to ask us a very succinct one.
Thank you.
Yes, it's on. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
You have been talking money and business all afternoon. Is there a part of you that speaks to community development? To what extent do you support community development, sir?
Well, it's encompassed in the mantra I stated initially, which is early in my life, I wanted to know I wanted to nail down what fulfillment means to me as a human being, so that I could start along that path and then get the compounding effect. You start early, doing the same thing over and over, you'll eventually get, and you persevere, you get the compounding effect. So I codified making money. That's one thing, but feeling fulfilled as a human being, that's another. And if you can if you can create wealth and feel fulfilled, that's the ultimate. That was my conclusion as to what I wanted for myself. In other words, I wanted to do well by doing good. I didn't want to be a transactional type of person or a quid pro quo type of person. I wanted to be the type of person whereby every time I have an encounter with anyone, I ask myself the question, what's the highest value add I can give to this person, this individual? What is that one thing? Or an audience, what's the highest value add I can give to this audience here, right? So to make sure I never forget, as I said, I codified it in terms of the Latin prosperitas cum caritate. And every business I'm associated with, including, well, NCB is a big one. And immediately on buying NCB in 2002, we changed the tagline from to NCB, building a better Jamaica. And we're guided by that. Hence, we would have given out hundreds of thousands of scholarships over the last 20 years. We would have done many community projects, mainly in education, right? So you cannot be a part of society and be an island in an ocean of mediocrity, right? You want to make sure that you uplift everybody to be the best version of themselves. Now, I'll give you, now that I'm fully on at NCB, you would have seen me in the Coronation Market, right? You would have seen me all over the place. I have an ambition. And the ambition is, I don't think any business has ever aspired to doing this, but we can do it, and we will do it. It's to humanize the business. Give the business empathy. Give the business, make empathy a culture of the business. Give the business care. Make care a culture of the business. Give the business aspiration. Make aspiration a part of the culture. To humanize the business. Give the business kindness. Okay? I don't think there has been a business that is thinking like this. But being the chairman and the majority shareholder, and we can do it. And that's what we're going to do. We do something unique. Yes. So that Jamaica can be proud. That's the aspiration.
Chairman, you said something earlier as I close. You said something earlier that when there's new territory, there's a combination of excitement and fear. And as you spoke just now and I saw the eyes light up, it was a combination of excitement and fear. For me, excited at what you were saying. Fearful that we may lose some of our 300 plus employees to you as they all want to come and work for you. But on a very serious note, ladies and gentlemen, what we've experienced today is passion, power, purpose, and very practical solutions, not only to how we transform Jamaica and our businesses, but how we transform our lives for many of us who want motivation about what our next step ought to be. And so I really want to use this opportunity to thank you for joining us at our third installation of the Port Royal Lecture Series, looking at the role of logistics and engineering in the financial sector. And I want to thank Mr. Leachin himself. Sir, we are grateful We're happy that you've accepted the invitation, and I'm going to ask my team, as I've thanked you, to bring our token at this point so we can give to Mr. Lee Chin. Let's give him a round of applause. When I went to the offices of National Commercial Bank, of the NCB Financial Group, I went to the atrium, I got a nice bag. Now you'll understand that we must be appropriate in what we do. So the fancy bag that he gave to me, we have to be appropriate in terms of our own financial standing. And we will give him something that says CMU, and we'll make sure that he has something that is emblematic of who we are. Among other things, goodies in the bag, but I assure you it will not be, and I brought mine today, it will not be mahogany in its presentation. But we thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being an amazing audience.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. If you look at your program, you will see there is a small QR code at the bottom of your program. I am asking that you just fill out our feedback